this, and there's not really one, well, there's one thing that I always try to look for when it comes to believability. The number one thing is, let's say, we're doing some kind of big sci-fi epic, concept painting. The fact that sci-fi it's in a genre in itself that doesn't exist, right? You're going to have to draw in some believability somehow. So the number one thing that I try to do is to make sure that there's things in there that are presently recognizable to people, like a door handle, something that looks similar to a door handle, or like a car. Everyone knows what a car looks like, and even in a few hundred years, the functionality of a car is going to be basically very, very similar. So those types of things are, really help a concept believable. And also, I do an exercise with some of my students where I have them look around a room, okay, and basically sit down and try to draw it. Okay, and they're not able to look up anymore. They're just able to look at the room and observe it for a couple minutes and then draw it. And the number one thing that people usually tend to notice are the really big elements. So if you're in a classroom, you're going to see maybe a computer and a desk and some chairs and some lights. That's usually the amount of information that we'd retain. But if you actually look around the room, there's going to be smaller papers, maybe cups and light switches and wires hanging, or stains on the floor, maybe a couple of pictures hanging on the wall. Those are the things that help make any concept more believable. It's that attention to detail, which is really, really important. So that kind of exercise actually does help, because once you realize what you're missing, then you always kind of keep an eye on it. So
awesome. Our next question is from Fernando Oliveira. I'm not sure. Okay, Fernando would like for me to ask the question, I believe, from his answer just now. So Fernando would like to know, basically, when he sees a background concept, they don't have much fine detail. He asks, how much detail does he need to have, or do these concepts need to have? I'm sorry, wait 1 second. Yes, how much detail do they need to have for these concepts in order for all the modelers and stuff to work, basically?
That's a pretty interesting question, because that kind of changes from studio to studio. Some studios have modelers that are very, very, very strong artists themselves and can look at pictures and drawings and illustrations, and basically even if those paintings are kind of loose and sketchy, they're able to get the gist of it and read the indication that you're trying to put out there. Other studios have 3D artists that aren't traditional artists, so it takes a lot more straightforward, very detailed drawings to have them model from, So it is going to change from studio to studio. The thing that I try to do, and I could show you in the slideshow again, is that here's basically a good kind of example. This was a painting that was done to try to get the overall gist of what this area would look like. It kind of detailed out the mood. There is a bit of detail, kind of over here and some texture, but if you actually wanted someone to model this, they need a lot more information. So this painting here was just to get the idea. Now this one over here is actually one that was sent overseas, I believe, to China to be modeled. Now the thing with that is, if you're going to send something overseas, you want to make sure that the first time you send it, it has all the information that's needed, because there's a time barrier, there's a language barrier, and you just don't want to deal with all that kind of stuff. So if you look at this, the forms are very easy to read. You could tell what's at a certain angle, maybe the height, and all what's protruding out. The second thing is that, you know, these attention to details of maybe these tiled bricks, steps, you know, you're able to understand what is dirt, what is snow, what is stone, you know, what's made of wood. You know, it's very easy to read. So I think, you know, anything that's, you know, about at this level is perfectly adequate, you know. Sometimes they want, you know, just a line drawing, you know, instead of a color painting like this. So it's going to kind of depend, but I believe this amount of information, you know, does its job, and shouldn't be any problem to read to any modeler. So.
Yeah, very impressive work there, James. Awesome.
Oh, thank you.
The next question we have is from Joshua, who asks, how would you compare working freelance to working in-house? Do you prefer the ability to work on many different projects, or what do you think makes one feel better than the other?
I think the fact that I did have a lot of in-studio experience made the made working freelance a bit easier. I think if I worked freelance directly out of school, not knowing any of the kind of in-studio culture and in-studio, you know, just the way things work inside of a studio, the process, I think working freelance would be much, much more difficult. So if I had any advice to anybody, is if you do want to work freelance, I would definitely take a few years to work in studio first. But some of the major differences is that working freelance, you have the ability to basically work on almost anything you want. You know, you have, you know, I can work on some sci-fi stuff. I can work on, you know, maybe a World War II shooter game. I could also maybe do some illustrations for book covers, you know, even maybe theme park work on films. So you have a wide variety of things to work for, you know. But one of the things is that with freelance, you always have to strive to produce more personal work, because those are the things that really grab people's attention. If I have, you know, I've been working on some video games for a bit now, and I'm not going to be able to show any of that work until the game releases, which is maybe not a year or two from now. So without having any kind of updated work to put on my website and maybe promote myself, it's going to be really hard to get some attention. So it's always important to do some personal work to get that across as well. But personally, I love freelancing. I'm able to kind of make up my own schedule, you know, work with any, you know, different clients. It does get a little boring at times because, you know, I am kind of alone most of the time by myself. So, but I have a couple of other friends that freelance, and we kind of, you know, work together and do things like that. But I personally love working freelance. It's just a lot of fun. But I don't think I'd be where I'm at now if I didn't have any of that in-studio experience.
Really great points there, James. And so when you do your own personal work, do you always wait for a freelance job, or are you just constantly drawing and updating stuff?
Sometimes my schedule is so bogged down with freelance work that, you know, I wouldn't do any personal work for maybe 6 months at a time. But anytime I do have that itch to maybe, you know, create a new image, or, you know, I have that really cool idea in my head that I want to put down on paper, or even when my schedule lightens up a little bit, then I'll definitely do that.
Awesome. Okay, our next question is from Dixon. Dixon asks, you use a lot of shortcut keys to speed up your process. Which ones do you use the most, and do you have shortcut keys to change a layer from normal to overlay, soft light, etc.? And also, do you use one to add a mask? If so, how do you set those up?
I don't, well, I do love using shortcut keys, but I know there's a way to create your own keys maybe within preferences